Hello, I'm Alan Palmer. Welcome from afar to my apartment and my tea room, Garando. We'll go into that another time. Today's lecture goes back the 5 elements. I sort of knew that when I was rather young, in high school, investigating the I Ching, the Ekikyo. I didn't know Japanese much at the time, so I knew it as the I Ching. And I always thought that the Ching was the change part, but it's the I that's the change. And we'll get into that, I hope, a little bit later. For those of you who have been here before, and I asked you what you thought might be the relationship between these two pieces of paper. Well, it's more complicated than I thought. We've seen a picture in the study guide from before, but they're related in some rather surprising way. So those of you who figured it out, it wasn't that long ago that I saw it for the first time. Sometimes we have things right in front of us that we have no idea beyond them. When I was first at Orasenke and I was invited to join the teachers from all over Japan for an intensive study period in your early 30s, as I was, that seemed like an interesting thing to do, although I didn't think I could make it. I had already gotten somewhat advanced by that time, at least I thought I was. And I asked Hōnsai Daisosho, he was Iamoto at that time. I said, is the Daitenmoku related to the 5 elements? And he said, yes. And 100 people turned around and kind of looked at me, wondering where I had come up with that idea. So if we could see the first slide, Tanya is in the library, and we're going to be going into the slides. And this is a drawing that I made. I should have put a date on it, but maybe 30, 40 years ago. I'm not sure, but the 5 elements really did interest me tremendously. In the West, we have 4 elements, but the East added 1 more. And the West, I'll start with that. If you are looking at the drawing, at the far left is a stone monument drawing, of course, stone monument to be a reminder of the immortal soul. And the bottom is, the cube is earth, a sphere for water, a triangle for fire, like a pyramid, and then a bowl is for wind. That may seem strange, wind for a bowl, but a bowl has an inside and an outside, and also wind is breathing in and out. Well, that's where the Greeks stopped, but Japan, Asia, I should say, not just solely Japan, but in Asia, they added the void, and that's undifferentiated yin and yang, which doesn't actually exist except in metaphor. And I began to see the parallels. On the other side of the drawing is a curious drawing of a Daitenmoku. And there they are. There they are. Doi, the earth, is the support for those of you who have practiced making tea with a Daitenmoku. And then a kind of saucer-like thing, which is round. It's water. Interesting that water has no form of its own, but it can take any form. And it's given the most perfect form, people believe, to be a circle, a sphere, really. So deep within tea and incense burners and tenmoku bowls on dies in China, where much of this began, there would be a little fire in the cup, that sort of little cup above the saucer, not the bowl, but the cup. That was actually an incense burner. And because of the danger, want to have water around. So in fact, there was water in that little saucer. Of course, these were bronze, generally, sometimes porcelain. And then the bowl on top, there's our bowl, which is symbolic of in and out, in and out. We'll find later that there are more than 5 elements. There are the parallel or the companion of the 5 principles. And the 5 principles change now, and that would be metal. The bowl is metal, metaphorically speaking, not necessarily, but there are metal bowls. And then lastly is the void, undifferentiated yin and yang, and that's our tea. Tea is the yo water, the yo tea, and the in water. Remember, you can get into it. So we mix it together, and we have undifferentiated yin and yang. Well, just below the 4 drawings, well, you can ponder those if you get the study guide, but the lantern, the one in my garden, is somewhat based on that, even though it was 30 or so years after this drawing. But it's a pretty standard style of garden lantern. And the lantern in the garden isn't to light the area, but it's to draw you to it. And its roof, and its bowl, and it's sort of like a flame, the flaming jewel, the hoju, the treasure jewel. And in my apartment, if you can see behind me, there is a plant from Elaine Lubin's garden, and it has Japanese lanterns or Chinese lanterns, and they look rather like this. And this is the flaming jewel, and inside is a little ground cherry, as we call it. And that's actually the hozuki right there, that little berry that I'm covering up. It's easier to see in a tomatillo. Tomatillo's in the same family. But that little cup that holds the bowl, that is the hozuki, and that's referring to the ground cherry. There's a building in between, which I thought had some parallels to the 5 elements. And then just below the 4 drawings are the 5 elements and the 5 principles. The go-gyo, gyo is transition, because the Asians have seen a transition between fire burning wood, and it's a little bit beyond my ken, but maybe you can have a greater understanding of it. And then next to it is the 5 rings, the chakras, and that goes into the kundalini, the development of the nervous system, the maturation of the nervous system. There are 2 more added to these 5. And we'll touch on those as we go through not only this lecture, but beyond. And then below the furo, sort of transparent furo, so that you can see the gotoku. The gotoku, as I mentioned last time, used to have the ring up, but now, well, from Rikyu's time, the 3 talons are up to support the kama. And so there are the 5 elements coming up in October. Urasenke followers will bring out the Gogyo Dana and put their ceramic furo on that tana. Yes, also, if you don't have a doburo, an earthen furo, the ash, the wood ash, is a good parallel, a good substitute, as it were, for earth. And the metal kettle and the water within and the charcoal fire. Really quite extraordinary. One of my favorite things. I have a multitude of favorite things. So this is something that I have learned from, just because I may give the appearance of being knowledgeable about a few things. I learn from these things all the time. And as I study, getting ready for these lectures, that I have been learning new things every day. So let's go on to the next picture. And this is a wonderful, wonderful object. This again is in common Japanese life made of stone and is at the gravesite of some person, some departed spirit. And here we have the colors. Now, there are variations on this tower of 5 principles, the Go Rin no To, the 5 rings, chakras, you might think, lotuses, you might think, but the character is ring. And the yellow earth is yellow. Whether it is or isn't, there are black beaches here and there, rocks come in all sorts of colors, but sand is kind of yellow. But be that as it may, yellow is the center. In the Yojohan, yellow is the center. And white water, for those of you who kayak, not me. I like water in a glass or a tub, but I'm not so keen in boats and such. I was on the swim team in high school, but that was a while ago. And west, white water in the west, white water west. And red, pyramid, fire, red fire. And fire's in the south, hot. I think we'll leave the fire and hot elsewhere and metaphorically. And then the black bowl, for those of you who have been enjoying tea in a black raku bowl, that may be the black bowl for you. Black is in the north, the dark north, the dark north. 6 months. I've never been up in the Arctic or the Antarctic in the center of the Earth, top and the bottom. I don't think Australia likes to think of itself as on the bottom of the Earth, but yes. And green is east. Green is the east. And in my world, green is tea. And if this were a Tenmoku bowl, that would be tea in the east. Tea in the east, that's sort of metaphorical as well. Let's see what's next. I think we're entering the Machiai, where you want to have something that will inspire people, sort of give a clue or an indication of what the event is going to be, what the theme of the tea might be. And this is a sensu. It's quite large. It's behind me. There are measurements for it, but it's here because it combines both 5 and 8. The 8 are the folds of the fan. When seen from the top, it looks like the number 8, but they're also upside down or back and forth. And the poem, the poem was written by Shiotsuki Gayako-san, and this was, I should say, Sama, Soshin-sama. This was a souvenir that she created for some event. She gave me this quite a few years ago, and it's one of my great treasures. Honobono to komayaka ni dare mo utsukushii. Honobono to komayaka ni dare mo utsukushii. Somewhat challenging to translate it. One of the translations sort of influenced by me. Warmly, in modesty, everyone is beautiful. I think it rings a little more beautiful in Japanese. The wave pattern in gold and silver was adapted from Shiyotsuki-sama's father, Tantansai. Tantansai loved the water, the wave pattern. He also loved the, well, many motifs, but one is Mubyo, the 6 gourds. But it's got 5 struts. This, of course, would never be used to fan yourself. And it is primarily an 8 upside down, coming from the fulcrum, the kaname, going out to infinity in 5 directions. In between, the ribs are spaces, and those are the in. So we have goyo, roku, in. So I think I have to get a little bit more on the road here. Going on to the next, and this is one of the real first and not necessarily obvious manifestations of the 5 elements, but usually we see them in the tea room with just the hiire, the fire holder on the left with the charcoal burning in it, and water in the bamboo tube, the high fuki. So we have a balance of fire and water. So fire on the left, water on the right. Our side of it is the north. We're in the north, and that's the seat of deity, the elevated person, your highness. And the guest is now looking at the tobacco bone with its pipe and its fire and its water, and inside that folded piece of paper is the thread tobacco. And that tobacco is a living thing, somewhat altered, probably more dead than alive, but it does change. We can change it. We can put it in the pipe and light it, turns to ashes, and the ashes get banged into the high fuki. If you go to a restaurant, you know this. If you go to a restaurant and there's the ash-filled lighter, don't use it for an ashtray, but you know that already. Wonderful comb-shaped tobacco bone, lacquered, wonderful maroon or chestnut color and black, rather elegant. The hiire is based on Chinese famille jaune, the yellow. And moving on to going out into the garden, into the doji, the dew ground. I should say dew ground as opposed to dew as in not don't. Fire and water. And in this instance, fire is on the right and water is on the left. That's a bucket of water, as many of you know. And the lantern is the north. We've seen this last time with a circular sun on the right and a crescent moon on the left. And the stones around that, I did the drawing. I have it to the side there for obvious reasons. The stones are large, not those little pebbles that I have here and there. But the 4 stone, that's the yellow stone on the floor, and that's the mai ishi where you would stand and use the water to rinse your hands and mouth with the ladle. All of these things would not be there at the same time. At night, many of them are. And the candlestick at night over on the right, and the stone basin, and the, well, in my case, the ceramic lantern, which I made with the great, great help of Stephen Murphy. And inside would be an oil lamp. That's a small electric bulb. Oil lamp, rapeseed oil, and it burns and causes soot to be made, a sort of gummy soot on the underside of the pyramidal roof, so to speak. That is scraped off and turned into ink, and that ink would be later used to write calligraphy that will be hanging in the tokonoma. So that's really one of the great changes that goes on, from a liquid to a solid, to a liquid to a solid, going from in to yo to in to yo. Curiously enough, the Mai Ishi, the front stone, that yellow stone on the floor, I went to Yellowstone as a child and I have great memories of it. My folks didn't think I would have any memories of it, but I do to this day. It's a yellow stone, and then it's the lowest of the 5 stones that are here. The next highest is the water bucket, the Yu-Oke Ishi. That's the next highest. This is really the ideal way that your garden, your tsukubai area should be constructed. And then the next highest level is the Teshoguishi, the stone for the lantern. That's supposed to be a candlestick. 3 legs, black. I just learned that the Queen Mother of the East, one of the earliest gods in China, she had a 3-legged black bird. I didn't get from the translation that it was a crow, but Amaterasu, the great sun goddess of Japan, she has as a messenger of a black 3-legged crow. Then we get to the tsukubai itself. That's the next highest stone. Sorry, the chozubachi. Tsukubai is the whole area. The stone basin is a chozubachi. When you enter, before you enter a shrine or a temple, you go to a basin with usually running water, often from a spring, to rinse your hands and mouth before you go into the sacred grounds. And that is the same characters, but te mizu. And that is a black bowl. Now, a hint for next time, which is going to be animals and guardians. There are 4 guardians of Buddhism, the 4 kings. One of them has a dual role, and his name is Bishamonten. As one of the kings, he's Tamonten. I know it sounds like too much information, but those 4 kings went to the Buddha and gave him a bowl. So he had 4 bowls and he changed it into a single bowl, which was black. So our black bowl may be our chozubachi. And then our lantern is a green. Green is live. Fire is kind of alive. Yes, all there and much more, which we'll get into. The Ekikyo, the trigrams of the I Ching, are there as well, but I'm not so sure that's correct. This drawing was done maybe 30 some years ago. And I think maybe if you are like me or something's done, then, that's it. But maybe this is not the right arrangement for the 8 trigrams of the Ekikyo. Could be fire on the left, water on the right. Not here, they should be. I don't know, maybe you could ponder it. Let's move on to 5 stones. These are the stones that are in my garden. I go to Provincetown from time to time and pick up the stones on the beach or shells. And I've been looking for a red one to go in the middle, as it were. And that's red if you have a good imagination. It's a little bit darker than red, but the yellow stone, the white stone, the red stone, and then the black stone, looking a little bit like a heart, a Valentine, our librarian, and then green, not a fabulously green stone, but in person, it's a little greener. So the stones themselves in the garden represent the Go-Rin no To. I'm not making this up. I'm putting it together. They're often, they should be wet. You sprinkle the ground when the host refreshes the water in the chozubachi, scatters it around so that the area is wet. It becomes dew laden. So these rocks are wet. You know how when you get a beautiful stone at the beach and you take it home and it goes gray because it was wet at the beach. So moving on to the tokonoma. Looks familiar to you, perhaps. Katsura is the tree cut down from my apartment, my former apartment. But the main ingredient, the main center of focus is the writing, the words, the words. Urasenke prefers words to pictures, although sometimes there are pictures that we can display. Dharma, for example, during the holidays, depending on the holiday, there could be a figure noted for that. And this is Dokuza Dayu Ho, alone, sit, great hero peak. Sōsei Iemoto no ji desu. Quite beautiful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. Doku alone doesn't have anything to do with undifferentiated yin and yang. They all do because they are products of solid, liquid, ink, dried, ink, dried. Hanaire is a rather classical Korean piece, modern. Well, this is now almost 50 years old. Well, let's say 40 years old, which I picked up in Busan in the airport when I went to Korea to change my visa, renew my visa. And on the right is a drum heads from a ko tsutsumi, and we'll see those a little bit later. And Rikyu somewhat secure behind the tokobashira. So 5 characters, Ekikyo mono, 1 passage. Gyo is transitional. And to me, it would be like a passage. And this is a passage from a longer text. Dokuza Dayu Ho. I think Iemoto, Sōsei, za, doku za, sit, great hero peak. Something to really think about. Are you looking at the mountain or are you the mountain? So moving down, I should say moving down, I'm moving down into the next picture. Yes, on the right is the upper part of the hanging scroll, kakemono. And that area we call ten, heaven. And it has fu tai, those hanging strips. They don't really know what they were used for. Some say they were to tie it down to something. Another one is, well, when they hang them up in the temples, birds fly in, and if they get too close, they will flap, their wings will flap, and the futai wind band or wind strap will flutter and frighten them away. If a bird gets close enough to flap the futai, they are close enough to damage it. So there's something else. And the something else is those little frills at the bottom, the tsuyu, little frilled threads to hold the front fabric to the fabric or paper behind it to hold it together. But maybe they have a particular purpose, a reason. And looking at the left, that is a tanka that's hanging in my altar room, I guess one might say. And it's usually covered with a veil, not unlike the veil of the kakejiku, the kakemono, next to it. And they have red, not all, they often have red ribbons that hang down. And they're not sure what those are either, but you keep the veil down until you're going to look at the picture. And the picture behind it here is Scenes in the Life of the Buddha, and it comes from Tibet. And my brother and his wife Jan got this hanging for me when they were in India. But the veil is kept down. Now, what's the veil? Well, in the beginning, one of those beginnings, the world was concealed behind a veil, and the veil was called Vritra. Vritra, personified, deified, rather wicked. But the world was concealed behind this veil. And Indra, the god, the king of the gods, Indra, he came along with his lightning bolts and removed the veil. So maybe those tsuyu frills are vajra, lightning bolts. Let's see what's next. Lightning. Couple of characters for lightning and thunder. They seem to be interchangeable. The top is the top of both characters. If those of you who can read know that that is a character for rain. It looks kind of like heaven with raindrops falling down. That's at least how I sort of remember it. And the lower part of the one on the left is dragon. Dragons bring rain. Lots of dragons in Buddhist art and in tea as well. Character on the right, also thunder and or lightning. And that's a rice field. Rain needed for the rice fields. Now let's see what's next. My joining of two chasen and a vajra, an Indian, this is from India, a brass lightning bolt configured from Indra's lightning bolt. This one has 5 prongs, well, one long one, that was the original one, a lightning bolt, that rod that goes straight through, almost like an axle. And there are lotuses and sea creatures. These talons, they look a little like talons, they are coming out of a sea creature, maybe a kind of dragon. But these points are closed, so that indicates peace. If they're open, it's war, because they are weapons. Well, I saw a great parallel between the Vajra and the Chasen. And the Chasen happens to fit together. I didn't just go into my cabinet and get out 2 because I knew they would fit. I did puzzle with them. But it's kind of hard to forget that image. And the Vajra changes things. It's water, related to water, because it's from the hand of Indra. Indra in Japan is called Tai Shaku Ten. Taishakuten. So let us move on. Now, those of you who know about the outside of a shifuku, your teacher, or maybe if you are a teacher, you know that the stitch that holds the front and the back together from ripping, those of you who can see me, I'm holding up a shifuku, and that little stitch right there is called tsuyu, and there's one on the other side. Well, if you turn the shifuku inside out, you see the thread has been left long and it frills or unravels by itself. The purple ones are a little bit hard to see, so that's why I have that one in the middle that's the same color, the sort of ecru, sandy color of the cord. But those are the frills. They maybe are the tsuyu or the lightning. If you have some extra time, you might look up, take some looking, to see in the East, in Asia, there is a great similarity between, or affiliation between lightning and dew. I was at Horyuji several years ago in a thunder and lightning storm. And Horyuji itself is the oldest wooden building in the world. And while I was there in the rain, there were these streams of little kids with yellow caps and shorts. It was sort of warmish weather. And lightning striking here and there and here and there. Frightening. Kids just walking in the rain with their little yellow umbrellas at the oldest wooden building in the world. If that doesn't give you goosebumps, maybe it's only me. Lightning has a color, has colors, and the highest ranking light is purple. There's a manga in Japan whose name is Murasaki Kaminari, or Kaminari Murasaki. I'm sure Lady Murasaki is enjoying that. I didn't know it until I was looking up, is there some relationship between the color purple and lightning? And lo and behold, there are many pictures of purple lightning. And going on. Now, on the left is a hook that you drive into the wooden part that holds up the top of the back wall of the tokonoma. And so it's driven in. They have some that screw in, but it's so close to the wall, I don't think you can do a very good job. So this is driven in. And next to it is a somewhat familiar design of lightning. Lightning wraps. Denkan, lightning wraps. And there it is wrapping. And boy, that sure looks like a lightning bolt part from the left. And it's driven into the ceiling, part of the ceiling. And the ceiling in Japanese is Tenjo, heaven well. I don't know. Let's see what's next. Flower vase, Korean. It's shaped like a mallet used to pound linen and silk. I think linen more than silk. Kinuta, kinuta, sounds like silk. And those are two phoenixes, male and female. They are ho-o, ho-o. That first ho is male, that second o is female. Honsai Dai Sosho. Phoenix. Not the Egyptian phoenix. That's a totally different creature. This is a symbol of goodness. And moving on. 3 Hanaire. These are somewhat based on Rikyu's Hanaire that he got from the Hojo. He and Hideyoshi were at Odawara in a confrontation with the Hojo. Took a long time, and the Hideyoshi and Rikyu, Hideyoshi probably more so, sent 3 bales of rice into the castle where the Hojo were installed, indicating that you can eat and for a long time and we will still be here. And the Hojo sent 3 pieces of bamboo. And those pieces of bamboo probably were green. And if they were green, they were meant to be cut into little swords called takemitsu, green bamboo swords to cut your stomach. But he turned them into hanaire. And these by different artists. The one on the left is by David Flanagan, lives nearby. He was very interested in bamboo and created many garden fixtures around this area. The middle one, the one on the left was modeled somewhat after Yo Naga, long night or night long. The middle one is based on Onjoji, one opening in the side. And then the one on the right, also, I should say, the one in the middle and the one on the right are both by Nishikawa Baigen, who gave these to me when I was living up in Takagamine. He has a wonderful shop there, bamboo that he's had for years and years and years. So, and moving down. Good, this is our drum heads, kotsutsumi, 3 pieces of incense. When you build a charcoal fire, that you're going to also build in the company of the guests, you will put 3 pieces of incense, byakudan, into the kogo, use the kogo to put into the fire, and keep one in the kogo so that the guests may see it. Well, before you put the fire in, there is shikiko. Shikiko is putting incense in before you put in the shitabi, the 3 burning pieces. And those 3 plus these 2 are 5. I wonder if those are 5. To be thought of as 5. The kobuksa, a gift from Bruce Hamana sensei in Kyoto. I think this was for his kanneki, but it's Nichigetsu Don'ts, and it's the sun and the moon, and there's the 3-legged chicken. Good, and moving onward. Fukusa is probably a representation of the Ekikyo. When you're folding it, examining it, you fold it really 4 times to create 8 sides. I have a drawing that I did a few years ago that shows various aspects of the Ekikyo on the fukusa, but I thought it might be a little too much. Wake seijaku, when I do fukusa sabaki, rather than count 1, 2, 3, 4, I say in my mind, wake seijaku, and sei, as it turns out, is the place where no matter how you fold it in the correct way, that place of sei is where you purify the utensil. Chakin behind it, shin chakin. Originally, they were the same size fabric, except that, of course, the fukusa was doubled. And the shin chakin, well, maybe next time you're folding a shin chakin, you will count the number of times. And next, the daisu, take daisu, Rikyu's take daisu. It's 2 shaku kujira. We had measurements before. 2 shaku kujira, wide, and 1 shaku kujira in depth. Top board is called heaven. The bottom board is called earth. And I know those of you who know Gyo no Gyo Daisu, a very formal presentation. The Hishaku and the Hibashi are not quite there. The Hishaku should be toward the front, and the Hibashi are toward the back. They establish, the Hishaku establishes north, so the host is in the north, and fire is in the south. So the Hibashi are pointing south, the Hishaku is pointing north. And these relate to the Ekikyo. So if we could move down, right. Give you a moment to look at it. This again is a drawing of a few years ago. The objects are not in scale, obviously. We have in class the Higashibon, and we'll get to it in a moment or two. And the Higashibon is placed on the heaven board, and the Chaide goes on thunder and or lightning. The Chawan goes on the lake or the swamp, if you will. Quite impressive. The Chashaku is on wind. Believe me, I know 4 of these. I have never been able to memorize the other 4. So looking at the front of the tenita, where the chakin and the chasen would be placed, one on the other, that's identified with fire. That one I know pretty well. And the one muko, opposite, is for water. And if you know the kanji, the character for water, it looks like water on its side. So water in the north and fire in the south. But it also identifies that the chakin and the chasen are identified with fire. Seems odd since they both are wet. I guess that's to help put out the fire. And then the other one, I still don't know it. I know it when I see it on the charts, but the wind, the chashaku is on wind. So I do remember how to put them there, how to display them there. And it's sing, song, leader. Shin, shin is thunder, lightning. Song, wind. Di, fire. Da, lake. Sing, song, leader. Shin, song, di, da. That's only how I remember them, but I don't remember the trigram. So looking below, this is my imposition on the lower part. The upper part, the Higashibon, that is established. Below, maybe not quite so much. And this is the old arrangement of the trigrams. Fire on the left, water on the right, north at the bottom. And far is the south, but look, it's identified as heaven, south. Heaven is in the south, and the north has the Kensui, but remember it's changed. So have the trigrams changed? I don't know. But the reason that I have them misplaced in the photograph is that the Hishaku comes out on the right, and that's identified with wind. And you know when you display a Hishaku on the tenita of certain tana, you put it really where the chashaku is, and that's wind. So both of them are wind. I'm not sure why, but if you look at the upper shelf, that's heaven. And that's where the root end of the take chashaku, bamboo chashaku, the the bamboo is growing out of heaven, blowing with the wind. The kamikaze, not the other one. And so looking again down at the Ji-ita, the earth board, the hibashi come out on the left side. You know, we bring them out on the right side because the hishaku is in the way. But the hibashi identified with lake, I have no idea what that means. And the lid in some temai is placed on the front of the mizusashi and probably closer to the trigram for mountain. And thunder is the futaoki. Wouldn't it be nice if it were wind? Because it blows through the fukinuki. So some of these are really unexplained, but not the fire and water and not the heaven and earth. Right. And going on, here's our Higashibon. The arrangement is what is on top. And not to jump around a little bit, but this is the new arrangement. New. Tanya, could we back up one? It's written here, but how to distinguish between the old and the new? Well, the old is the earth board, the old earth. And Fushi was the person, Chinese person, who created this. So it's the old version. And then a while later, Prince Wen comes along and rearranges them. And that's on the upper right. We have new and wen and ten. It's the tenita. It's new. It's wen backwards. Wen, ten, ten, new. And the old one, fu shi, is close to shi, chi. Well, maybe. If you can remember one, maybe you can remember the other. Right. And going on down now. Good. We missed the board, but sorry, the bon, the bon. These are, if you can sense it, they're slightly off center. So when I was purchasing this in Kyoto at a doguya, or tea utensil store, I looked at 7 of them, only 1 was correct. I know there is no other arrangement that I know of, I should say. So be careful when you buy one that they are correct. So bring along a diagram to make sure. This is inlaid with mother of pearl, and its width, its full width is 8.8 sun kujira jaku, the big measurement. The ring foot, I learned, well, I played yesterday with it, it's hasun, and it's kujira, the full diameter and the diameter of the ring foot, 8 and 8.8 kujira. The board, the tenita, is 2 shaku kujira. So that means it's roksun to the edges. You can see this gets rather complicated. Hi, and moving on. Right, here are examples of the Godin toe. The one on the left is actually the Godin toe that was made by Henry Mitwer in Shigaraki clay. He was a devout, wonderful, wonderful Buddhist who in his later life was living in the gatekeeper's house at Tenryuji. He was a monk at Tenryuji. And this, he gave it to me, and I have it in place in memory of my mother. I have another that's in memory of my father. And the furo, the 5 elements in the furo, that I have done quite a bit of research on why the sphere of ume, plum blossoms, there I said it, plum blossoms, I know why it's hollow, but it sure kind of has a feeling of a flaming jewel. And there are kama that are based on the flaming jewel, the whole jewel, the treasure jewel, undifferentiated yin and yang. And there is a daitemoku chawan with a metal rim. Might remember that the bowl represents wind and metal. The metal rim is actually to protect it from the bronze or metal ewer that was used to pour hot water into a tea-filled bowl, tea powder, then water added and then whisked to become a go-rin no to. The tea will go into your body, into your in center, your tummy, and its energy and such will go into your yo center, your brain. So the undifferentiated yin and yang separates. And next. Right, this is me at my sink with my tools. I have to apologize in a way. I used to make rather nice, smooth ash. And, but the reason that I am showing this is because I am quite certain that Rikyu intentionally opened up the furo so that we could see these two waves, this ni monji, the circle, the four corners, the three corners. So it's the square, the cube of the earth. Remember, the earth is a square or a cube. Fire is a triangle, and water is there for protection. And you know, we write the trigram for water in the ash. That trigram, if you go back and look at the diagram of the, we won't, to look at the arrangement of the trigrams, water is in the north. So this establishes the north. Well, to disguise my poor ash, going on to the next one, you can see it isn't much better, but it is dragon scales. So maybe the photo is a dragon. I'll try to touch on that next time when we're, the topics are going to be animals and the guardians, but there are 117 scales. Let me see if some of you can figure that out. And moving on, the kensui goes into the mizusashi. The shakutate goes into the kensui, into the slice, like the house that Jack built. And the fukinuki, the wa, futaoki, goes around the neck of the shakutate. And then the lid, being the fifth element, goes on top. So it represents in some way the go-rin no to. The lid makes it in or yo. It can close it, make it in, make it yo, leave it open, and make it in. Like the kama is left open, so it's in, hai, and next. Good, 5 pieces of bamboo. The roots are in different directions. Starting with the chashaku, the root end is at the scoop end. The chasen, the roots are really the tines. The tines in a way are kind of the root. And then the hishaku, the roots would be up into the air. It's coming down out of the sky. And the handle, the roots are in the handle. It's sort of an extension of your hand and arm. And then the futaoki, the root growth is upside down. So 5 different directions. They may also have something to do with the 5 elements. Wind blowing through the fukinuki. That's why it's got a hole in it, so it can't hold water. Maybe the hishaku is water. The chasen is certainly lightning. Hai. And next, square. This is a basket that I found and put some black paper in the bottom. Square, earth, round, kan, they move the water, not actually physically, but it's in the kama, the circle. The hibashi are a triangle when you use them, like the fire. And then wind, there's our bird wing, and the kogo is modeled after the flaming jewel, the undifferentiated yin and yang. Quite wonderful. The godin no cho. Hi, and next, 5 pieces of charcoal are added to the 3 pieces of shitabi, starting at the bottom, do, earth, body, circle, the gicho, the split, the wadi gicho has corners, it has corners. And then the kudazumi implies wind blowing through the kuda, pipe, tube, and then our tenzumi, 10 means dot, but it means everything, earth, water, fire, wind. And well, uranao, fortune telling, which is wind, kuchi, the square, kuchi, and then uranao, vertical and horizontal, undifferentiated yin and yang. So probably the 5 elements. Hi, and next. Aha, this can be confusing, but they are related to the Ekikyo. And how on earth is that? Well, I'm prepared. So if we could switch, and you can ponder that and think about which might be which. Now you remember Marumai and Kakumuko. Well, this is the muko. The seam is at the back because this is the showman. This is the showman. The hashi, the host, is serving. And the far pieces are, as you know, Uminomono. I'm going to be over here on this side. Let me see if I can get this. And let me see if I can get my camera going here. There we are. Hi. So you can ponder that while I go get the yokashi. The teishu's on the left. And if the kyaku is on our right. The senbei are flying around. I made these a little while ago. They're not that difficult. There, my tiger rug is taking precedence over it. So the teishu serves first the Uminomono. And the Uminomono is far right from the guest's perspective. And you remember your teacher, maybe you are the teacher, the first suite that you have is the Rakugan, which is Migimuko, far right. Same location from the guest's perspective. And then after each one has Uminomono, remember it's sake, sakana, sake, sakana. First sake, and then the food to go with it. And so Uminomono, Uminomono is the first one you had, the seafood. From the guest perspective, far right. In tea, we have the sweet first, Migimuko, far right, and a bowl of tea. So sake before the food, tea, food before the tea. Then start all over again. And the teishu turns the tray around to give it to the guest. And the guest serves the host. The server is the higher position. These senbei, I am somewhat proud of them. They're not that difficult to make. I use a waffle iron. I've made a couple of videos, and maybe in the future I'll show you the video of me making it, but it's the flat side of a waffle iron. Some have the knobby side and the others are the flat side. And so you just squish them. The little cube, you cut your kirimochi. This is powdered sugar and water, because mochi has mochi taste, but not much. And so these burned add flavor to it. Quite wonderful. They're rather thin. They're not fluffy and puffy like oike senbei, but I'm going to have this right now because it is soon to be tea time. Well, let's see. Yes, it's kind of interesting. The uminomono are musubi kombu and sweet potato icho no ki, no ha, sorry about that, and maple leaves. I know they're sort of anticipating autumn, but I took a trip out into beyond 128, and it's sort of the country out there, and there were leaves all over, not lots of them, but enough to make it obvious that autumn is here. Not officially, but theoretically. So our next picture, going back. Good. So now let's look at the chart here. I always think that let's look at the Hasun first. And what's in the upper right-hand corner but mountain? I'm not making this up. The Uminomono is there in the mountain. I don't know what that means. I've been trying to figure out earth and Kong, and certainly the sea. The sea is on the earth, but it would have been nice if it were lake, but no, it's not lake. Isn't that interesting that the Uminomono should end up in the Yama? I just find that amazing. Now, earth. We'll get into this a little bit more with guardians, but that place in the tea room, that very place is where Dainichi may be guardian. And Dainichi is the universe made manifest. And the Kegon Sutra, there is the Kegon sect of Buddhism, features rather a lot. Is that good English? Well, maybe it is. There's a passage in the Kegon Sutra about Dainichi and the sea, oceans, called oceans. This is Uminomono, so they're salty. It occurred to me today, well, that's the real difference between the Hasun foods and the Higashi foods. One is salty and one is sweet. Now, let's look at the Higashibon. I study these all the time just because Anthony has created these from my scribbles. And I learn from it all the time. It's sort of, well, it's like magic. But look at the upper right-hand corner. Well, not really a corner, it's a circle. Remember, one is a square and one is a circle. And Rakugan is sitting there, and look where the Rakugan is. Rakugan is regarded as the Shin Okashi, Shin, the true Okashi. And that's where Shin is. Different kanji. That's the thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning. Shin. Shin Okashi. They're called Shin because sugar, not the form we know today, but sugar was given from shrines and temples. That was the first time sugar was really introduced to Japan in very early days. There was sugar, a kind of black sugar, at Todaiji in Nara for a great celebration. Sugar was very, very expensive, I guess, because only the rich could afford it. Now, looking at the Higashibon, once again, we have wind and so. Well, when I was looking yesterday to see if there was some correlation between wind and any other kind of sweet, Rakugan should have above right, in the Shin place, who knew? But any other kind of sweet, lower left. That's why my senbei are in the lower left. Well, the other reading for song is Tatsumi. I have a really good friend, Paul Nagano, who did several of these paintings, Tatsumi. Dragon's snake, Tatsumi, dragon snake. And there are okashiya all over Japan that are called Tatsumiya, etc. So no connection whatsoever, but as it happens. So the sweets for omogashi being gyo, and because we know what the Shin Okashi is, that's the Rakugan, often shrine have sweets, pressed sugar sweets that have the mon or some design related to that shrine. And gyo is the namagashi, and then namagashi. There's a not so funny joke about that. So the other sweet is the so, no matter what it is. Good. Let's see if there's anything left. I'm sure there is. Right, this is a preview of next week. I'm holding it in my hand. And it's probably, well, it's an antique. If you go antiquing out to Brimfield and have the courage to go out to Brimfield and get a pulled pork sandwich while you're there with thousands of other people and dealers, this kind of ceramic ware is often for sale. And it's probably Art Deco. If there's influence of any cross-culture, this is probably Art Deco. The lightning bolt, just under the rim, there's a zigzag pattern. That's that lightning pattern again. Can be a family crest, and that is a dragon. Well, I think it's open mic night, and I think we're running overtime, or I'm running overtime here.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe before we stop the slides, we can pull up the image of the tea room.
Well, I'll be eating on the way.
Okay.
They're really quite wonderful, even though I made them myself. After years of thinking this is impossible, they're crispy. Sorry. And it's just powdered sugar, water. The dye is flavorless, and mochi. It's really wonderful.
Well, if people have questions, feel free to send them in the chat. And Tanya, open the diagram, and maybe when Sensei comes back, he can talk about this a bit.
Yes, yes. That's essential. There we are. So this is a sambo, very important to understand marumai and kakumuko. Well, we see that the square, our hasumbon, comes directly from this style of offering. There's the flaming jewel, but it's an opening. There's an opening on 3 sides. And the back, the seam is there. Well, why isn't it this way? Because it's being offered to Shiotsuki-san. We're offering it to her. And this is, I don't think this usually goes here, but I'll put it there. This is the origin of the Tsubomon of the Sen families. 3 of them. And this is Iamoto's top mon, his mon. The Hozuki. I had it in the tokonoma and it didn't look quite right. But that's the flaming jewel. That is undifferentiated yin and yang. When you store your chawan on top of the die, it becomes this little paper husk with a point. Oh, the wind blows. And to the tsukubai. Sōsei Studios, this is where all the magic happens. The windows. And the dora. And our guardian, Shinoyaki, identified by the artist as a karajishi. Sorry, karajishi, I was right. And the bell from Midera and the tokonoma. Anthony, I like this use of the stand. I can really get up there.
It's a little bit more steady this way too. So
Right, I don't know, would you call that a lightning? Maybe not. But there's Rikyu, Kutaniyaki, and the kaigu here has its roots in my family's everyday service of cups and saucers and plates. And the first one that I got in Boston was this cookie jar, which is a really wonderful mizusashi, just needed a lacquer lid, and a bud vase. It was under $20, so it's a vase. Fits nicely though. And probably a juice glass and a cereal bowl, but nothing is perfect. And a natsume on the Higashibon. This is my indoor kura and garando. Garan sounds a tiny bit like aran, maybe. I had to alter my foods because the shrimp I prepared looked too much like the sweet potato. So I cooked up some kombu. Kombu is really quite extraordinary. And it turned out to be vegetarian. As you know.
For showing us the tea room, would you also talk about this diagram of the Ekikyo trigrams and the elements in the tea room?
Yes. Yes. Well, let's look at the tea room to begin with. And north is up, is above, to protect from the northeast. But looking, starting, well, let's start really at the Temaiza, metal, heaven. Heaven. That's where our dogu goes. And the Teishu sits in the west on the lake. In the lake. That will make more sense in a little while. And here in the lower left corner is earth. The Ekikyo trigrams, heaven, 3 solid lines. And earth, that's yo, and earth is 3 broken lines. Well, only recently, a couple of days ago, I thought, well, 1, 3, 5, 9, etc., these odd numbers, they're solid. They're undividable. You cannot divide them. Whereas 2, 4, 6, 8, they can be broken, and that's why you have these broken lines to show in, because they can be separated. 1 cannot be separated. 3, you get 1.5. That's not really equal separation. Yes, it is. Well, the next that are perhaps the most important are water and fire. Water goes from the center, all of these do, from the center and goes forever north. It's water. And if you look in the tokonoma, the area of water from the tea room, that's where all your hanaide are displayed. Right in the center. That's sort of calling it close a little bit. But the back wall, that's where the muso kugi is pulled out or pushed in. And the tokobashira, the willow can hang in the corner. All of the water, the hanaide, are in that area. That's really kind of remarkable. And as we'll see next time, kannon is probably there. Kannon has a willow. In fact, my lamp is a willow kannon. Then to the south is fire. This is just like the tray, the Higashibon, fire in the south. And then over here along on the right is those water, wood, and metal. Those are identifying the 5 elements of the room itself, having little to do with the trigrams, with the Ekikyo. They relate to the 5 elements that I've been talking about. But that's mountain. Dokuza Daiyu Ho. Shokyaku sits on the mountain. Then the second guest is thunder. Have to think about that one. That's the trigram for thunder. Just to remind you, I only remember 4 of them: heaven and earth, and fire and water. And fire and water are the only 2 that are opposite each other in both the old and the new. So the third guest is wind, right by the door. And then the fourth guest is fire. Happens that they're both fire there. Di. Di is fire. Shin, son, di, da. The floor is the same as the Higashibon. But the fourth guest does not sit there. The fourth guest moves so that the Shokyaku sits on the kinin tatami, not on water. That's sensei's place. That's the teacher's place. Even the kinin doesn't sit there. Oh, and by the way, the kinin does not sit opposite the line that separates the row tatami and the other guest tatami. That space between the row, which isn't always there, space between the row and the kyaku tatami. That's where the kinin sits, not where the sensei sits. Now, one has to take a little bit closer look to the tokonoma. Now, if you hang a picture of the rising sun, that's the east. So it's changed. The hakke, the 8 trigrams, are changed. And water now is in the north, but if you think of the left wall, well, you see in the tokonoma, it says water. That's north. And south is where fire is. And that's where your kogo goes when you exhibit the kogo. It goes in that area because it's going to go into the fire. So it represents fire. Also, a candlestick will go there if you have one. But look what's at the back wall, the middle of the back wall. Thunder. I rest my case. And I'm eating my sweet. Anthony, do we have any?
Yes,
this is scratching the surface. Please don't think that's all there is. There is a lifetime of pursuit of what's going on in there. If you're interested, I can appreciate it's a little much, and it is, especially if you can't remember half of them. Anyway, I'm eating my sweet while we get questions.
And so one question is the take daisu separated into in and yo also?
Yes. Because the earth board, I don't know if we can call it up, but the earth board, oh, I'll tell you what, it's right here. It's right here.
We have the slide, Sensei. So.
Yes, good. Well, it says on the right, the in. Now, why is that in? Well, these are earthly things. Tea is earthly, of course, but they are real things. Earth, water, fire, wind. Well, wind, not so much. Right, and tea, heaven. Heaven, it's emptiness. It's theoretically emptiness. So that's yo. Thingies, all these, I know there are things, but those things are in. And yo, heaven is yo.
Thank you. One other question was, somebody was more interested in the connection between the Fukusa folding and the Ekikyo. Can you comment more on that?
Well, yes. Yes, let me get my Fukusa, which is right here. Let me aim this down a little bit. We can resurface. Right. So it starts out square, and for wa-mono, so to speak, we go on to the next one, but we folded it in half. So now it's 2. That 1 has become 2. 1, 2. Two. See if I end up with the right one. And then on. So we turn this 4-sided thing into an 8-sided thing. And going further, if I were to, well, let me get it.
And maybe if people want to join us for tea, you can prepare your bowl and starting your videos.
I'm sorry, I was away and I couldn't hear you. So here is my fukusa. It's sort of red and purple. Starting off, make sure I have the correct fold. I have to start with the correct fold. And there's eki, so eki. On to the next one. And I would begin wa. That's why they're in this location. Wa, ke, sei, that's me, Sōsei, and jaku. And then folding it in the somewhat simplest way. And there's sei. There's sei. In Shin, you have to start the right way. Wa, ke, sei, I hope it comes out right, jaku. I didn't start right. Have to start right. Remember how Rikyu and every teacher says, start from 1 and go to 10 and then go back to 1? There we are. So wa, ke, sei, jaku, and mo, ka, do, gong, sui. And that's where we would purify. And in Gyo, if you get to Gyo, I know this looks like I'm sending semaphores. Not that way. Well, Gyo comes out in the same place. And if you look at the 3 places that actually touch the object, I wouldn't touch this, but actually where you touch the object is a straight line from Gyo to Shin to So. Quite unbelievable. How it relates to it? Well, it makes the 8 sides. The drawing that I have, it's paper towels that I have writings all over. It's in my file somewhere, and maybe I'll get it out, but Anthony will want to change it into something that people could read and not be overwhelmed by the, shall we say, scribbly aspects of it.
Thank you, Sensei. So if people would like to join us for tea, we have a couple more questions, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to get to them, but maybe we can have...
We'll see. I'll go get my bowl.
I'll start my video and do gallery view so we can see everybody that has joined. And Scott had a very interesting question. I know Sensei's not here at the moment, but Scott, would you be willing to join on the microphone when Sensei comes back and ask your question? Because I'm not sure I quite follow, but it seems like the answer might be very interesting.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Sensei, we have Scott, fellow Rhode Islander here, and he has an interesting question.
Sure.
So, and this may be beyond what we can talk about today, but within the trigrams in the system, there's the so-called the old, I think it's the old kingdom system and the new kingdom system.
Right.
They're different. And for somebody like me who spent quite a bit of time trying to understand the old system, the new system makes no sense at all, but that's a separate subject. When you showed the diagram of the Hassenbon and the Higashibon, one was in the old system and one was in the new system. The Hassenbon is in the new system. The arrangement of the trigrams.
Right, it's in the new.
So, as I said, for someone in Chinese medicine, for instance, you learn a lot about the old system, and the new system. The way you learn the old system makes the new system seem cuckoo. I mean, it's really hard to understand how maximum yang and maximum yin are only one trigram apart.
Right, right.
Rather than in the old system, they're pairs of opposites. And also in the world of Chinese medicine, the five elements are five things around a circle and quite different. So I don't know if there's a question here, but how do you reconcile which system you're using depending on what you're looking at, if that makes any sense?
If it works.
Uh-huh.
If you have a fire and an actual fire like what's in the furo, and you put that in the old and the new, and its opposite is going to be water, because fire and water are the only two that are always opposite. In the new arrangement, heaven and earth are off to the sides. So what's that all about? I know about one part of, we'll say, 100 that's involved with the I Ching primarily, because I was studying that most of my life. No, I can't say that because I learned about Japan and then discovered the Ekikyo and how I've really been influenced by both. I find it so interesting. In college, I was a bit of a geomancer, a little fortune teller, and would read I had sticks and then I had coins, and I still have my coins over there in my altar area. It's absolutely beyond me. It is so utterly complicated. And now because of my age, it's just too late for me to understand some of this stuff. But in preparation for next week, 2 weeks away, right? 22? 26. I keep saying 22, 26. Which is about animals. And I thought, well, how many times his dragon appears in my book is the I Ching, the Wilhelm book. It's in the first line. Well, I don't know about the first line, but it's in the first comment. And because it depends on the numbers, like 9, 9 is a yo number. I almost did yo. Now I have to find it. It won't take too long, but it's in the first one. Yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo. Right, the first one is creativity, and it's all yo lines. And then it gets to beyond the judgment, and then the lines. This is if the line is fixed or it's moving, changing. That's the change part. So if it's yo, it might change to in, and vice versa. But when you start with the first line, it's at the bottom. Lines are drawn at the bottom. So
Yep.
when you do water, it's a broken line, long line, unbroken, and then a broken. You start from the bottom. But here it says, this is the first line of the I Ching. 9 at the beginning means hidden dragon. Do not act. Well, this is the only time that dragon appears in the text, but references throughout all go back to the dragon. Goshobani tashimasu. Well, I don't know if that was actually an answer to you, what you thought might not be a question.
Well, thank you very much for that. We have a couple other questions, but I think they might be a little bit too much to handle in the time that we have. Just a reminder, I think a lot of our emails lately have been going out with Sensei's email address on it. If anybody has additional questions that we couldn't cover live here, you're welcome to send Sensei an email to get those answered. So thank you for your questions.
Well, I have one little thing to throw on to the 5 elements. There's a 6th. The thing itself. The thing. This, get my, right. My mother's monument. Yes, this thing is shiki, consciousness. But 6 can be divided, 5 can't. So we get this goyo roku in, the outsides. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, consciousness, shiki. When Dharma is asked by the emperor, who are you? And he says, Fushiki. Unconscious? Not conscious? No consciousness? So I hope all of you will tell all your friends and join and come. If you can bear this, you can bear almost anything. My chawan is from Ryoanji, and it has 5 stones, 5 pebbles embedded in the bowl itself. It's well, somewhat modeled on the tenmoku, because tenmoku shaped bowls were first really in temples. But they like this indentation around here, but it's that indentation that was the real thing, stopping the tea particles from coming into your mouth. Questions, Anthony, or have we come to 108?
I think we've gone a little bit over, and sorry about that, everybody, but thank you very much for coming. And Sensei, thank you very much. Maybe we could all join in arigatou gozaimashita.
Arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you.
Okay, bye. We'll be on again in 2 weeks, so I hope to see many of you there. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.